We are coming back for our second hour. This is Ash Hamilton with horror-fix.com. I've got my co-host with me tonight. We have Jim Chandler. Say hello, Jim.
Hello. How are you?
You're supposed to say hello, Jim.
Hello,
every
Jim.
time, Jim. Damn it, Jim.
Damn it, Jim.
John Gardner. How are you doing, John?
I'm good.
We have another distinguished guest on the show tonight for the second hour. Longtime friend, paranormal investigator, friend of the show. What other monikers can we give you, Rob?
Biggest idiot you know.
That's reserved for so many people.
I spoke up for that one.
Yeah, that might be exclusively reserved for John tonight.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, it's good to hear your voice, Rob.
Let's go.
How have you been? How's your week been? Like, we haven't done a week rundown yet on the show, which we usually do, of either how bad or how good our weeks have been. So how's your week been, Rob?
My week has been interesting. We're trying to tighten up some things for October. We're trying to, we have some speaking engagements coming up. We're trying to plan a few things with the group that we can get out to the public and educate some people, talk to some people, have some fun with some people. So this week has been good. It's been productive.
I had a messed up day today, Rob. I'm going to tell you about it. It's kind of great, but it's still kind of messed up. So
it wouldn't be you and I if you did not tell me about your messed up days.
So a friend of mine calls me, right, texts me. She's at home on her lunch, and she says, there's someone next door in a shark costume on their lawn. So curiosity instantly piqued. I'm like, tell me more about this potential shark attack that's happening on land next door. She proceeds to then tell me, well, I can't take a picture of it because they'll see me. First of all, if you're on your lawn in a shark costume, someone taking a picture of you is the least of your worries.
Yeah.
You're almost expecting it. So I said, it's your duty. Go take a picture of this person in the shark costume. She's like, there are other people out there. And I'm like, well, why wouldn't there be? Of course there are other people out there. This person's got a fucking shark costume on.
It's a land shark.
In broad daylight in the front yard of their house. And then she says, oh my God, they've got a rope around her. What?
They're lassoing a shark.
So I get a video.
Was it Chevy Chase?
I could only hope. I get a video of a woman in a shark costume. She's got like a rope tied around her. They're using a tree as leverage. She's lifted into the air, and then there is, and I shit you not, a mailman dragging a stuffed seal across the yard below the shark woman.
Huh.
Where does my
Okay, I missed something on shark.
Where does my day go after that, Rob? What can I expect after this happens?
Did this happen locally?
I think we need to one-up it.
Well, I got a little number I could put on, but I think would one up everything.
That involves the police coming out, and we can't do that.
Well, I've got another joke about a tight seal that we'll talk about.
No. Just okay.
This is how we're going to lead with the second hour.
You did say distinguished, right?
I get Rob on, and it's like, okay,
Tight seal.
the gloves are off. We have to talk about tight seals. So,
it's better than, we could go back to the old, Bill Cosby in starring roles he was born to play.
Bill Cosby War Machine. I haven't broke out Bill Cosby War Machine in a very, very long time. So to give people background, and we'll actually get to Rob's background here in a second, but to give people background on the previous show, which Rob was a frequent guest on, we had a co-host. And actually, that co-host has been in the studio.
It's all right.
Mark Gray has
yeah.
been in the studio. So Mark's an interesting cat, great guy, love him, has a heart of gold, but it's like for whatever reason, whenever you would say that they casted a black actor in a role, like Mark would like always ultimately go to like Denzel Washington or someone, and it's like there's more black actors in Hollywood than this one guy that you keep saying every time we say that someone's been casted. Because we were talking about them. This gives you an idea of how long ago this was, but old school, Marvel Cinematic Universe, when they switched from the old War Machine, the old Rhodey,
Right.
to Don Cheadle's.
Right.
Right. And we were talking about what would be the worst actor, considering that Mark apparently thinks that there's only one black actor in Hollywood. What is the actual worst actor that they could get for War Machine? And we landed on Bill Cosby, didn't we, Rob?
We did. But then it became the best actor to play War Machine.
And then after that, we couldn't think of anyone but Bill Cosby in the role of War Machine. And once upon a time, I did a pretty decent Bill Cosby impersonation. Now, of course, it's a whole different impersonation, and it involves an order of protection. But once upon a...
And a tight seal.
And a tight seal.
tight
Yes,
seal.
most certainly. But the fact that, if you could put Bill Cosby as War Machine... We got the rockets! With Iron Man!
Yeah.
So, one of our favorite characters was Bill Cosby, War Machine. So, I think we might have to dust off some Bill Cosby, War Machine jokes.
Did Nicolas Cage ever try out for War Machine?
I'll do it.
I'll do it.
So, Nicolas Cage, we've got a potential role for you. You are going to be a black actor. You're going to play War Machine, but you're going to be the wrong black actor, and you're going to be playing Bill Cosby, playing War Machine in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I'll do it.
I'll do it.
I'll do it. Because we both know, Rob, Nicolas Cage will take any role.
Of
We
course.
know this.
At this point, I think he has to.
And we often talk about what kind of addiction does Nicolas Cage have that is so expensive that he has to take any role. And we thought it came down to zero gravity. His addiction is zero gravity, so he's constantly getting on any shuttle he can for the zero gravity experience, because that's the eccentric kind of addiction that Nicolas Cage would have.
Right.
He would have to be addicted to zero gravity.
Oh, yeah.
I can't feel my legs. I'm weightless. And that's our Nicolas Cage.
That's how I got space ass.
That's how he landed the part of space ass.
That's right.
Was Nicolas Cage's bizarre zero gravity addiction. It's like I weigh a lot, but I don't. This is all we're good for, still, Rob.
Wow.
In case you thought that the humor was elevated from 10 years ago,
Nope.
it's still as lowbrow and base as it used to be.
Well, that's perfect, because I'm as lowbrow and base as I used to
I
be.
love it. So, for our audience, obviously this is a news show. We're approaching this like everyone knows who Rob is, even though it's been... God, has it been 10 years, Rob? Since we've actually been on the radio together? My God.
Yeah.
Where has the time gone? It's been a long time. So give us a little bit of a background on who you are, especially in regards to investigations, the paranormal investigations, things of that nature. Give people a little bit of a Reader's Digest condensed bio of Rob Pistilli.
I started Monroe County Paranormal Investigations in 2002. So we're working on our 17th, going on 18th year of paranormal investigations. We've investigated over 1,000 private homes. We are a complete not-for-profit, not interested in television, not interested in fame and fortune, just simply interested in helping people that are experiencing things in the paranormal. I have been in 5 different books. We've been on several different local news shows, local radio. We've been on your podcast, several other podcasts. We just believe that the paranormal is something that should be out, should be educated, and people should understand it and feel comfortable to talk about it.
Now, as far as what originally got you into it, were your interests previous to it? Was there an epiphany? Was there this moment that connected you to it? What exactly was the backstory there, Rob?
There's actually a lot of backstories. I grew up in northwest New Jersey, and there were lots and lots of local tales and local legends and things like that in the area. And as a kid growing up and experiencing them, it was one of those things where it was always in the back of my mind. And then in the that area of 2000 to 2002, I started having some experiences that I couldn't explain, and I was looking for help. And then I found out there were groups of people out there that actually researched this kind of thing and helped people with it. And I reached out. I contacted a person that ended up being a very good friend of mine and still communicate with to this day, and started investigating. And before I knew it, I was hooked into trying to figure out the mysteries of the paranormal and how we can go about helping people deal with what goes on. But I grew up in Morris County, New Jersey. I don't know, probably nobody listening knows where that is, but there was always this tale of the hooker man, and it was the story of a gentleman that was supposed to be putting the mail bags on the hooks at the town crossings off the train. And supposedly in this town of Chester, New Jersey, he reached out to put the mail bag on the hook, and the hook somehow grabbed his wrist or the clothing on his wrist and pulled him off the train. And the conductor was supposed to look back, and if there was a green light, everything was fine with the mail transfer. If there was a red light, then there was a problem. Well, supposedly the conductor looked back, and as the guy was swinging on the hook, he was swinging the light, and the conductor could see the green light. So the conductor supposedly just went on. Well, as kids, we used to go back to the end of this road, and sure enough, in the middle of the woods, out in the middle of nowhere, on unused railroad tracks where there's not a road or a traffic light or anything nearby, you could see the green and red lights flashing every once in a while. And it just kind of hooked me that, wow, there could be something more.
And we occasionally hear about, and it's strange because it seems that the phenomena is able to sort of self-categorize in a way where we have phantom lights, and those seem to be frequent occurrences as far as the paranormal is concerned. We have wailing ladies or women in white. We have that a lot. Why do you think we do have that? I mean, because even though someone would venture that this is a story that's just told socially, and then it gets spread to other places, but we have this experience that is very singular to people who go out and they witness this. So I've always just been curious. I mean, is that a paranormal experience that for whatever reason is just something that's so occurs so frequently that we think there's a connection, or do you think there's a connection between the fact that we have so many lights and then so many ladies in white?
My personal theory is that we have pareidolia. Okay, I don't know if you're familiar with pareidolia or if you want me to go through it real quick, but what it is essentially the mind automatically makes sense of what you see. When you see something, it automatically connects a shape or a face or a figure. When you look at a cloud and it looks like a rabbit, people go, oh, look, it's a rabbit. No, it's a cloud. It just happens to have the randomly rough shape of a rabbit, but your mind automatically says, oh, cloud looks like a rabbit, it's a rabbit. I think that what happens is with people, they see something and they try and justify it. And they've heard about all these other people that said, oh, it was the lady in white or whatever it was. So to them, it becomes a justification. It becomes what other people have seen so that they're not the oddball out that has seen it.
So it does sort of become like a chicken or the egg scenario then. Are they witnessing something that has that story attached, or are we attaching the story because we witnessed something?
One of the biggest cases that we deal with here in Rochester, New York is, and we get this call all the time. Have you investigated the Lady in White's castle at Durand Eastman? Sorry, I forgot the castle part. It just so happens that along Lakeshore Boulevard, looking out over Lake Ontario, there's a very old stone structure up on top of a hill. And somehow, through local lore, local legend, it became a castle. And then it became the Lady in White Castle. And it went through this whole transformation over time of, the lady, there was dogs that were chasing after the people that attacked the Lady in White's daughter, and the Lady in White is still roaming the grounds looking for her missing daughter. And we have gone through the historical documents so many times with the town historian. There's never been a house there. There was never any kind of registered dwelling in the area. The actual stone structure that people are seeing is part of a commissary from a zoo that was there from turn of the century roughly until the 1920s. So if you could tell me where that story began, I'd love to know, because there's absolutely no historical or factual evidence that there was ever anything that took place there. But to this day, if you walk up to a person in Rochester and you talk to them about, the paranormal, and you say, have you heard of the Lady in White? They'll go, oh yeah, I've seen it.
Nice.
And I don't get it. We have researched it to the nth degree, only to find out that, that cool stone structure up there, that's where you used to eat your 5-cent hot dog when you went to the zoo.
Now, something else that we talk about quite frequently is we talk about these places that inspire stories, and that's sort of what we're touching upon now, are the places and the events and the situations, the scenarios that inspire stories. And some of those stories we find are so inspiring, obviously, that they spawn their own art, they spawn their own movies and films. Let's talk about some places that might have inspired horror films. We're going to bridge the gap tonight, Rob. We're going to bridge the gap between two of our favorite topics here on Night Terrors Radio. We're going to talk about the paranormal in relationship to horror films. So what would be some of the most... And you guys, let's all join in. We'll be a little round table here. What are some of the most popular, based on real event horror films?
Amityville Horror.
That was kind of a layup.
Wow.
But do you know what the true events of the Amityville Horror actually are?
Was that are you talking about the Indians, or are you talking about the killings in '76, or?
I'm actually talking about the Herman home in Seaford, New York.
Not such a layup.
Color you curious?
No, not such a layup all of a sudden.
Well, we would love to hear more, Rob.
I actually, when you and I talked about this topic, and you said, "Hey, Rob, do you want to come on and do this?" The first thing that popped to my mind is the movie Poltergeist.
Ooh.
Okay.
Not the new movie Poltergeist, but the old one with Carol Ann and the goat.
Okay, well, there's only one Poltergeist movie, Rob.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Oh, the second one had the creepy guy with the little girl. That guy was really creepy.
His holy temple. That's my impersonation, by the way.
Nicolas Cage.
Well, anyway, ignoring that.
Moving right along.
Moving right past that. Wasn't Bill Cosby War Machine?
Sorry.
Tony Stark's get pudding!
So, in 1950, in a town on Long Island, in Seaford, Long Island, there was a family, the Herman family, and they experienced all kinds of paranormal events taking place in the home. Noises, popping noises, bottles opening and opening by themselves and tipping over, and strange things going on. And they actually called the local police. The police came out, investigated. The police officer that did the initial investigation actually claims that he did witness the events. He heard the popping. He saw the bottles, toppled over. A lot of things had gone on. They actually, in 1958, involved the Duke University psychology department, and they came and investigated. In between, I believe it was, I'm going off of memory, but I believe it was early 1958 until mid-year 1958, about 70 different occurrences of this popping noise and these different things going on that were captured by other people, but no explanations were ever offered. An article about it was written in a local newspaper as well as a local, whatever you want to call magazine, touristy type magazine about this Herman home in Seaford, New York. Well, fast forward to the Amityville horror. Part of the story that was told by the family was actually the Herman family story from Seaford, New York. When he came out and admitted the fraud, he admitted that he had read the story of another quote-unquote haunting as a kid and just remembered certain facts of it. It became part of the basis for the Amityville horror. It also became part of the basis for Poltergeist. Now, how did it get involved with Poltergeist? Ever see the movie The Changeling? I know you and I have talked about it before, Ash, but the other guys, have you seen the movie The Changeling?
I know what you're talking about, but I have not seen it.
Okay. Jim, as I shake my head in disapproval.
He was busy watching yesterday.
Oh, stop it. 1979 movie.
He was busy auditioning for War Machine.
I've got plenty of time to judge Jim. Rob, continue.
He does too.
So the guy that wrote the movie Changeling, when he wrote the screenplay for it, he was living in Denver, Colorado, and there's a park called Chessman Park. And at one point in time, it was a pauper's grave, and they buried people that didn't have the money to be buried on their own. They buried convicted criminals. They buried a lot of ne'er-do-wells in this area of Denver called Chessman Park. Around the turn of the century, they decided that it was too valuable a piece of real estate to be devoted to a pauper's grave, and they actually reached out to the families of the people that were buried there and said, hey, we are relocating the people that are buried here, but it's on you, for a fee to do it. Otherwise, we're just going to, mass grave everybody and be done with it.
Classy.
So the few people that were moved, what they did, they actually just went in and planted bushes in the holes that were dug to move the few bodies. The rest of the bodies, all they did was take the tombstones and left the bodies and built a playground over the top of it.
Playground for the dead.
It's like they went through the possible list of worst options.
Right.
Right.
Nothing could happen with this. Oh.
So somehow, when the people that were, developing the story for Poltergeist, put the two stories together and came up with that popping noise and that electrical static and that the things toppling over and all that kind of stuff happening and the chairs moving around that happened at the Herman home in 1958, along with, the story of the Changeling and the fact that they did not move the bodies out of Chessman Park, put the two together. third thing that happened with the movie Poltergeist is while they were creating the outdoor area to film that, they actually uncovered an Indian burial ground.
And this was during the filming, correct?
Relocate filming.
Wow.
What's that?
During the filming, right?
During
Wow.
the filming. And one of my favorite parts of that whole thing is that you have these paranormal events leading up to the creation of this movie. During the filming of the movie, there's yet another event that happens, but then you have that paranormal tie-in after the movie, The Curse of Poltergeist. And it's one of those things where, like, what came first, the chicken or the egg in that particular instance,
right.
You know? Like we were just talking about, because you have, you know, the mysterious happenings to the cast and crew of the movie after the movie is made. It was a paranormal event that inspired a movie that inspired a paranormal event.
Well, that also leads us to something like, it's almost like a thought form kind of thing, right? I mean, and we hear more talk about that now. I think the paranormal, we heard about it in the 70s. People were talking about stuff like thought forms, and now it seems to be something that's sort of been repopularized. Is that something that you think you could apply to this situation, Rob?
Absolutely. It's almost a flow chart. I don't know. I'm trying to think of another movie that has that tie-in, but to me, that's the one that has the biggest.
Right. Yeah.
Of like you said, that it all the process is there for that thought form.
Now, I know that there's been a lot of speculation. I don't know how much you know about this, Rob, but there's been a lot of speculation on just what the actual possession story that inspired The Exorcist, that inspired Blatty's novel. Do we have any information on what the likeliest culprit was for that?
Well, another strange tie-in to Rochester, New York. The priest that actually did the exorcism work in that, in the real life story, was a parish priest at St. Thomas here in Rochester, New York.
Now,
that's where he ended up after that.
That wasn't Malachi Martin, was it? Or was this someone different?
I cannot remember the priest's name right off the top of my head because you asked me. I just know the local tie-in through doing local lore and local history.
Gotcha.
But I honestly, to this day, believe in possession. You and I have talked about this in the past. It is something that happens. And I honestly believe, if you look back at the events of what really took place, the true events, obviously not Hollywoodized, there is a case for actual possession.
Do you mind if we talk about possession for a moment? Because it always fascinates me. Strangely enough, even though I myself am not a very religious person, the things that actually scare me, strangely enough, are always of a religious nature. And I've never really been able to make that connection yet as to why those are the things that scare me as much as they do. For example, cults, like religious zealots. Yeah. I guess people that are so firm and cemented in their beliefs that they can't be swayed. You know, someone that you can't talk, especially in the case of like an overly zealous cult that you can't talk any sense into, terrifies me. Honestly, like to me, that's the most horrifying thing. Is not like even monsters. It's kind of like, okay, you're a monster. You do what you do. You do monsterly things, and I understand that. You know, I just got to get a silver bullet, or I got to get some garlic, or a steak, or whatever. But it's like I feel like you could kill a werewolf easier than a cultist. Like I just have this weird feeling. So the idea of possession also sort of scares me, and I don't think it's just the idea of The Exorcist, but I also read, by the way, if anyone here has not read Father Malachi Martin's book, and it's about 4 possessions, and I do believe it's actually in the New Jersey, New York area, Rob. And I'm trying to remember the name of the book now. jeez, it's I can't remember the name of the book, but if you just go on Amazon, look at Father Malachi Martin. It's been a widely publicized book, but the way he talks about
Not Malachi, Malachi.
Oh, really? Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, it's not Malachi, it's Malachi. The Malachi Crunch was on that.
Okay.
Right.
And I kept, as I was reading Martin's book, the one thing that he focused on, that it seems that a lot of movies fail to focus on, is that there's this huge part of the possession process that's this bizarre seduction. Like, it's not just like you wake up and all of a sudden you're like, hey, Captain Howdy, how's it going? I got room in here for two. And then suddenly you're possessed. It seems that there's this process, and a lot of that process involves this seduction aspect, where this force or this entity really sort of looks at what the human counterpart is lacking and appeals to that. And I think that's what really terrifies me, Rob, is this idea, first of all, that we talk about possession in a film, but I don't know if I've seen a possession film that really went into that. Strangely enough, though, the first season of The Exorcist television series did. And I found that first season to be fairly creepy. And I'm actually surprised that it didn't hit a wider audience. But have you read or heard about that a lot? Is this seduction, of the host?
There's one movie, and I'm trying to remember the name of it. For some reason, the name of the entity is coming to me.
That's what I was thinking.
But it was about a woman that was like actually put in like a glass cube and viewed, and there was like a spirit that kept coming to her and molesting her.
That would be the entity, yeah. That would be the Barbara Hershey film, yeah.
Right. That was the one that I saw that was closest to what you were saying, that kind of almost courtship of the spirit. Now, there are people that believe that when it comes to exorcism, it's simple, or possession, I should say, it's simply not simply, but it is a mental condition. It is schizophrenia or bipolar, or something that's manifesting through as possession. Then there are those that believe that there are spirits out there that have the ability to overtake a person and actually live within that person. In my eyes, exactly what you were saying. If a spirit is going to possess someone, it's not going to be one of those things where they just kind of show up and, oh, this is a shiny new person suit, I'll try it on.
Right.
That person is going to have some kind of a defense, some kind of, this isn't right. There's going to be that, tick in the mind that says, that sounds good, but wait a minute. There has to be that courtship, that wooing. There has to be that getting to feel all the little pieces that are missing, all the pieces of the puzzle that aren't quite there. And I think what happens is, in my mind, I have been consulted with on an exorcism case twice before. As I look at it, I cannot look at it as just a mental health issue. I look at it from a spiritual aspect, and from that spiritual aspect, I believe you almost have to accept that if there is a possession, the possession has got to be from the bottom to the top. It has to involve everything. So it has to be emotional, physical, mental. All of it has to be tied in. And to tie all that in, it does take that little worm getting in there to start. And then that worm kind of branching out, and slowly knocking down all the walls to allow possession to take place. And when you look back, historically, a lot of movies, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, based on a true story, The Haunting in Connecticut, based on a true story, The Warrens, all these different movies have touched on that kind of thing.
Did we ever pinpoint the true location of the home for the haunting in Connecticut, Rob?
I don't believe so.
I would have.
I do not.
No, go ahead.
As far as I know, no.
Mm-hmm.
But it is based on a true story, from what I understand.
Now, the original documentary I thought was terrifying. The original documentary was done very, very well, and I remember it being one of was it Discovery Channel that actually had the original documentary? But I remember it was the most requested, one of the most requested programs they had, and they would have weeks where they re-aired programs based on fan response and audience response, and that one always came up. And I remember watching it several times and being genuinely affected, genuinely sort of creeped out, scared whenever I would watch it. But I think you hit on something that, and I think I know why, at least as far as the possession stuff goes, why maybe, I have my own fears on it, is because some of the lowest points in a person's life is the idea of a void. Mm-hmm. Whether it's purpose, whether it's, sometimes being single, whether it's sometimes being with the wrong person. I mean, it always seems to be that lowest point is because there's something that's not there. People don't really look at the lowest point as a point where there's an abundance of something. It's always, this void. And I think the idea of having that void filled, those moments, and I think that's what scares me, are the moments where you would feel that complete, even if it was a sinister presence doing it. How overpowering would that be? How seductive would that be? So that you would have to say, I don't ever want to let go of this feeling. This is the first time I felt whole. This is the first time I felt complete. I don't want to let go of this feeling. Have you, as far as investigating, have you ever ran into someone who communicated that to you? Whether it was they, had encountered an entity or a paranormal situation where they suddenly felt so much that they couldn't think of not feeling that anymore.
We actually had a case that it happened to me. We showed up at a location. I initially refused to even go in the location. You know me. You've known me for a long time. I don't really worry about things, when it comes to these situations. I just go in and do what I have to do to help whoever I have to help.
Right.
I actually stood outside the door and said, if you want me to go in this place, you're going to have to push me in the back or kick me in the butt or something to get me to even just cross the threshold into this house. And while I was in the house, I kind of just, it was such a strange feeling. I can't explain it. I was myself, but the emotion that was coming out of me was not me. Little background on the home: people were already planning on moving. They had all of their stuff packed. In the over 1,000 private home cases that we've done, it's the only one that I said, yeah, move. It's, most times we try and help people figure out how they can stay and protect their possessions and their home. In that particular instance, the three of us that were on the case all agreed, nope, just move, get out. And it was one of those things where, as I was standing in this kitchen, I reenacted in my mind the events of that night. And a Cliff Notes version of what happened was, girlfriend breaks up with her boyfriend. Boyfriend breaks into the home, waiting for her to come home, stands in this little alcove with a knife. As she comes in the home, he proceeds to attack her and stab her. He then ushers her 7-year-old kid, who watches this whole thing, into a back bedroom and instructs him to stay in the back bedroom, not to come out, or the same thing will happen to him. He then proceeds to turn the knife on himself. The little kid escapes, goes to the next door neighbor, calls police. Police come. Woman dies 3 days later in the hospital. The guy does not die. and ends up in prison. As I'm standing in this corner in this little alcove, I without even realizing I was doing it, I'm like pounding my hand on this door jamb, and it turns out, that was kind of the door jamb where he was kind of holding the knife and just kind of poking the knife at the door jamb, waiting for her to get home. And I'm going through this whole thing and I'm going, that bitch, when she gets home, she's going to get it. And I can hear myself saying it, and I've heard the audio tapes of what I was saying. And two of the investigators that were there, Brian and Stacy, you met both of them. Stacy was like, boy, you don't look like yourself. And she looked at me and she goes, you really want me to shut up and leave you alone, don't you? And I went, yeah, better. It's like a totally out of character for me to be that way. And it was so enveloping and so overpowering. I went home that night and I had this dream, and in the dream I had blood covering my hands. And I snapped up and looked out the window because I swore there were going to be police cars in the driveway, arresting me for killing someone.
Wow.
It overtook me for a week, a solid week. It overtook all of my thought process. Every time I would close my eyes, all I could see was this horrific scene in my head. Now, I had no idea what had happened. We had no idea what had happened. The only way we found out all the information that has happened was about a week afterwards. Stacy had gone to the local library and unearthed all the stories that had gone on. The people that lived there didn't even know that happened. It was so odd that, to this day, when we talk about it, tonight, I'm going to have a hard time sleeping because I'm just talking about it, and now I know it's in my head, and I'm going to have that dream tonight. And this is going 5-6 years ago that this happened.
Now, not to linger too much on this, obviously, but I believe you and I had discussed this at one point, Rob, and there was something about the land or the area or something behind the house as well.
Yeah, I wish Stacy was able to be on this because she's the historian part of it, and she knew a lot more of it. But I believe there was an animal graveyard or animal burial area back behind the house. Yeah.
Now, this is going to veer a little bit from this, but something that I have really been interested in. All of this obviously revolves around the conception that there's something else beyond their corporeal reality.
Right.
There's something there, a remnant of a force, whatever we want to call it. It seems that we touch it, we're faced with it. Hundreds of thousands of people, if not more, have had instances where they've seen things that obviously border on or are firmly placed in the realm of the supernatural. But it seems like there's either an inability or sort of a reluctance for us to get clear answers or the answers that we're looking for. And I guess what I'm asking you, Rob, is do you find that are we not getting the answers that we want, or are the answers beyond our understanding? I'm not saying you have the answer, obviously, because that's what we're all looking for. But in your opinion, where do you think we fall on that?
Opinion only?
Opinion only.
Opinion only. I think that there's such a stigma, it's just such a stigma to anything that involves something people can't physically put their hands on. I have had an argument before with, go figure me having an argument with people.
What?
I've argued before. I've argued my point before with scientists and with all these other people that say, well, there's no, scientific proof. And one of the things that kills me is that, in physics, we will go sometimes 3, 4, 5 dimensions in math beyond the dimension that we're on to prove that a theory works. But if you even slightly mention to them that there might be another dimension to the world, they flip out. you're crazy. There's no proof. Okay, but you want me to take your math and go 5 dimensions beyond the math we currently use, I don't know. I always use the quark. The quark. It is it's completely agreed upon that the quark exists, though no one has ever seen one. The only way that they prove that the quark exists is through 4 dimensions of math. But you can't believe me when I say spirits exist when I have a recording of a voice, that came out of nowhere, or a video of a figure moving through a room that came out of nowhere. I obviously must have faked it. It's because the stigma of, I honestly think that people will, oh, you're crazy believing in ghosts. It's because when you were a kid, your mom always said, oh, there's no ghost under your bed. There's nothing in your closet. You get conditioned.
Of course, now I'm going to look in my closet, Rob.
Check under your bed.
Spoiler.
Once I move all the skeletons aside,
Hey,
I'm going to look.
Are you using the tagline?
I'm always in the closet. But that's for different reasons.
John.
That's for different reasons.
That's as.
Are you using the tagline, we're under your bed?
We can hear you breathe. And we like your perfume.
You smell different when you sleep.
I'm not stalking you, but the new living room furniture looks great.
Right, yeah. Yeah. I love it when we take these long walks together. Of course, I'm 75 feet behind you, but that's fine. We could spend we could spend all night, obviously, talking to you, Rob.
Yep.
And we definitely want to get you back on the show. What do you have going on right now? What's going on with MCPI? And what are you guys doing as we get closer to, obviously, the Halloween holiday?
We are currently arranging our yearly trip to Fort Ontario here in Oswego, New York. The fort that dates all the way back to the 1600s was, pivotal in the War of 1812. Changed hands between the French, the English, the Americans. God knows how many times. We go out there once a year. It's an awesome event. It's for people that we always get the question, hey, can we go on an investigation with you? Yes, on this investigation, you can go with us. It's a fantastic time. It's a great location. The people that run it are awesome. It is, unfortunately, for some reason, it's not listed on any kind of U.S. Historical document or anything like that. So the fort relies on, believe it or not, paranormal groups coming to investigate to get work done. We make a small donation. We go out there. We have, 6 or 7 hours at the fort, the cemetery, all over, and then they take the money and they turn it into, paint for for the buildings, or some floorboards where some floorboards have rotted out, and they really do the upkeep with it. So I encourage anybody that might be listening that's in the Oswego, New York, or Western New York area. Fort Ontario, awesome place, great place to go. We are currently arranging that. We have a few talks coming up at local libraries. The Halloween lecture swing. It's a lot of fun. I love getting people involved. I love hearing stories from people. I was listening to, was her name Clarissa before me on the show?
Clarissa.
And she said, we always joke about, you get that phone call, this is going to sound crazy. No, it's not. You just called the paranormal investigation business.
You called the one place that isn't going to think you're crazy.
Yeah. Right.
But I love the stories of, my grandmother's house. I used to live in this apartment, just like she said. Well, that doesn't be no good now. But I love those stories because those are people that now, they saw a chance and they came to, a room full of other people that were interested in the same topic. And now maybe for the first time, they're approaching us and saying, you know what, when I was a kid, I had this happen to me. And maybe for the first time they're getting that out, and they're realizing that maybe it's okay that that they, saw Grandpa at the end of the bed or whatever the case may be. And it's it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. I hate the word haunting because it carries such a negative connotation. It's why can't visitation from a spirit be a good thing?
Right, yeah, and I think that we talked about stigma and the fact that spooky stories, given the moniker spooky stories, are meant to be scary stories, but there are so many stories out there where someone smells a deceased loved one and they know that they're there, or someone sees them or talks to them, and there are stories that have a lot of heart and a lot of sentiment that I think are rarely communicated.
That's the main. We do what we do to help people. And, if we can help you by saying, yeah, that might have been Grandma, and maybe she was coming by just to tell you that she's okay and you should be okay. If that helps, awesome. Because we come into contact with people that want to be haunted, believe it or not. They've had a fight or an argument with someone, and through some strange turn of events, that person passes away. So the last thing that was said between the two of them was said in anger, and now all of a sudden, all they want to do is hear, that everything is okay, that they're not mad, that they're not, So every little sound, every little creak, every little thing is, Uncle Harry coming back to tell me that, he's not mad at me anymore. It's because deep down, the stigma isn't there. We want to believe that there's spirits out there. We want to believe that those things go on. But to admit it, that's where the stigma comes in.
Where can people see where you're going to be, where the team of investigators that you're part of is going to be? Is there a social media presence? Is there a website?
Yep. MonroeGhost.com and Monroe County Paranormal Investigations on Facebook.
Gotcha. Now, it was great catching up with you, Rob, but again, we definitely want to have you back on the show, and we're looking at having this roundtable sort of experience closer to Halloween. Do you have something, John?
When we finish, before we leave Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Oh, got nothing to do with anything we're doing. It's just currently, for the first time since we've been doing this, my kids are watching. Yeah, both my little girls are at home watching us.
That's pretty awesome.
Say hi to Abby, Shelby.
Hello, Abby and Shelby.
Well, hey, go ahead and say hi now. We'll have the camera right on you.
There we go. Just want to say hi to my girls. Anyway.
Mine are forbidden. They can't come downstairs and watch this.
But you can say hi to them if they're in the other room.
I could yell
See,
in case we haven't heard people walking upstairs already.
I just assume those are the cats.
We've got some big cats. Again, you got a couple moments off the air for us, Rob?
Absolutely.
Again, thanks so much for being on. Everyone who's watched us live tonight, thanks for tuning in. We're getting past some of these learning curves. People are actually able to hear us and watch us, and we got a little production value in this thing. And hopefully in the weeks and months to come, we're going to offer a show that has a little more variety maybe than some of the other shows that they're seeing on Facebook Live and YouTube Live. And
like singing and dancing?
That's exactly what he's talking about.
That's what I thought.
Let's not point to the stands just yet, John. I think maybe we can just point to first base and have our expectations solidly there for a little while. For everybody who is listening, thank you so much. By the way, we're going to start posting shows in advance on the site, on a calendar for what people can expect. We sort of had a call to arms for this particular night, and now we're about 2 months out booked for the people that got a hold of us
that is
wanting
sweet.
to be on the show. So the good thing is that we won't be scrambling to get guests on. We'll be scrambling to get them back because we didn't have enough time with them, which was definitely the case tonight.
Right.
So everybody who's listening on Facebook tonight, thank you so much. Again, if anybody wants to ask questions or ask the guest questions during the live experience, please pop on Facebook, and we'll try to be a little more communicative and a little more interactive in that sense too. And if you got a couple moments for us, Rob, we'll talk to you in just a second.
All right, brother.